Sora. Not that one. That guy. A revered dubstep, future rhythm, and color bass act, known from labels such as Halcyon, Rushdown, and most recently Cyclops Records, with a new EP. It's really good. You should check it out. I had caught wind that Sora was releasing a preset and sample pack, and I was very interested because I knew that it was going to be good. And only a day later, on Twitter.com, I see a post from Sora, a proposal for a contest calling all producers to make the most epic drop that they possibly can, with the only caveats being the song has to be longer than 60 seconds, and the song has to use a lot of the contents of the pack. So, presets, samples, you get the idea.
I have a contest. I challenge you to also do your own Make a Drop challenge using the samples and presets. I'm going to pick the top 5 submissions, and those submissions will get showcased, and the number 1 spot will win a collaboration and also some extra goodies.
Now, upon hearing this information, I got to work instantly, immediately. I mean, I'm lying. I opened Ableton and then I looked at the screen for approximately 30 minutes straight. I might have even played Clash Royale or something like that. But I did get to work, truthfully, moments later. And the inspiration struck me like lightning. And I was making something that I thought was truthfully special. So without further ado, this is how I won the Sora 2045 contest.
The official winner of the Serum 2045 contest is After Sight.
All right, and we are officially in DAW. This is the second time that I tried to record the actual breakdown process. The first time did not go so well, so I'm hoping for a much more fluid and simpler second take. So let's get started with just a little bit of introduction to this whole project. So for stuff like this contest, whether that's like a remix contest or just like a production challenge or something, I usually start with whatever is the most important part of the track, in which case it was the drop. And then I kind of work around that and I kind of work backwards. So for the purposes of this video, though, I'm going to go in order from intro, just straight from intro to the outro, like left to right. But when I was writing it, I started with the A section of the drop and then, went to the B section of the drop, and then I went back to write the intro, and then eventually I finished with the outro. I was just going in the order of what felt like the most important, because when it comes to challenges like these, we have a limited amount of time. So we're going to start with the intro. I'm just going to break it down just left to right. So this is my Ableton session. This is typically what it looks like. This is how I set stuff up. So I usually have a group for just drums and percussion, or kicks, snares, all sorts of typical dubstep drum stuff, and then toppers like cymbals, crashes, ghost note, percussion, stuff like that. So that's how I like to do my my routing and stuff. And then everything else is in this big all group, and then they have their own subgroups, and these are all routed to the sidechain, which is being triggered with a MIDI trigger down here, which is just following the drums. And the drums are in audio because I used to use drums in MIDI, but I have become enlightened and realized that audio drums are superior in every way. But this is just using a Shaper Box 2 with a very simple sidechain shape right here. And the only thing that's really happening with this is there's an automation in the build to alleviate a little bit of the sidechain pump toward the end of this build section. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's jump into the introduction and we will go from the ground up. So from the top, we got this piano from Spitfire Labs with their signature music box. Something that I like to use a lot is the Spitfire Labs music box. It appears like once in like each of the tracks that I make. It's beautiful. I love it. So we just have this little intro thing here. And this, once you get like that, you kind of understand the main idea for this like entire little introduction and this build section here. Down here is a first of many Sora Serum presets, which is just this little lead, which is heavily filtered out with some reverb and stuff. And in this next section, not only does it go up an octave, but it also has the filter the low pass filter is fully opened up. This is paired with another music box. And then one of the pads from the Sora pack, along with the Reese bass from the preset pack as well. Now, while all this is happening, there is a resample of the first half of the first drop that is playing beneath everything with a filter on it, and it's sounding super, super ominous and precursor-esque. It's just teasing a little bit of the drop before it actually gets kicked off. I like to do this. I feel like most people do something like this to help introduce the idea of the drop, so it doesn't just come out of absolutely nowhere. Some people swear against this, and they just want to be like completely surprised by the drop idea. I am kind of in favor of just like having some sort of indication of like what you're about to be listening to, because it just helps transition people into the drop easier, in my opinion. But on top of this, there's just some like ear candy Foley type of stuff. There's just some chimes and some sparkling stuff like that. And then there's also some guitars that I recorded here, which are just super reverbed out. And then a company one-shot that just had a ton of resonators on it that got stretched out with a super long tail and then reversed so that it has this like sucking motion into this next section. So in this next part, there are like some just a little bit of drums going on. Nothing crazy. It's just like some normal like ride, or like just some normal cymbals and like a big like rhythmy clap that's just happening to help introduce some rhythm before the actual build up. Now we move into this build up section, which is more like a downlifting section, because the percussion itself is increasing in rhythm, but there's a frequency shifter on this snare and also an EQ on the snare, which is tuning it down and also low passing it over time. And that just helps bring the overall dynamics of the build into this section where you get the pre-drop vocal, which is actually from the Japanese version of Valorant. It's a voice line from the agent KO. I forgot exactly what he was saying, but it sounds pretty fucking sick. And Sora likes to do this thing in his tracks where he uses like anime voice lines or just like Japanese voice lines, and he does it a lot. Because he's a huge weeb. Don't tell him I said that. But I knew that like he would probably enjoy if I tried to emulate that kind of pre-drop style, because you know it's his contest, it's his samples, it's stuff like that. So I took a lot of pride in finding a good Japanese sample to put before the drop, and I feel like I did pretty well. So now we arrive at the actual drop itself. I'm gonna try to speedrun this whole section because the first time that I recorded this, it went fucking horribly wrong, and I like just got super sidetracked. So let's go from the top. So the downbeat and the offbeat right here. So this is just a Sora preset. I'm gonna show you this real quick. This is a Sora preset that was in MIDI earlier, and I'm gonna recreate it real quick just to prove it. But this is just another preset that just had like a ton of effects just slammed on it, saturation, shit like that, and it ended up sounding it sounds a little different than the original patch. I'm gonna pull it up here in just a sec, but I think it sounds really sick. So this is a little too high. That is the one. That's the original patch, and then this is what I ended up turning it into. So obviously, much bigger, much beefier. It has a sub now, so it actually has like some real crunch to it. But I'm really proud of this one, and it takes us straight to this offbeat right here, which is a combination of a Sora Serum preset and an audio sample. So there's this guy right here, which is just, like I said, it's just an audio sample with a little notch in the high end because there's like a little click in there. that I wasn't really a fan of. And then there's some reverb and then an OTT afterwards, turned all the way down on the time to give it like a super big reverb tail. And then we have this guy right here, which is just a serum preset, which is just doing this like little stab thing with a resonator on it and some other basic processing. And together, these two, this downbeat and offbeat, work pretty well. And that's why I kept these pretty consistent throughout the course of this A section here. The only variation being in this second half of this A section, there is a different version of this first downbeat here, where I use another audio sample paired with another serum preset that I chose deliberately not to freeze to audio because I wanted to be able to show you guys like all the samples that I was able to use. That's the main reason why a lot of this stuff is still in MIDI. I would have frozen it otherwise. One of the only exceptions being this one up here. This one's pretty sick, and I'm honestly like, I really like this one. So pair this one with the sample, and you get a pretty gnarly downbeat. And then if you add in the offbeat directly afterwards, you get this nice call-and response. And now I can focus on the main bass design of this first drop, which was, I wouldn't say complicated, but there is a little bit going on down here. So this is another Sora serum preset. It is the bass, it's the aggressive twos preset with a little bit happening to the LFO shape and a smidge of change to the filter inside the actual FX. And I think I might have toyed with the filter inside the oscillators. But what's happening here is there is an arpeggiator, there's an Ableton ARP that is doing a very strange, ungridded like rate, which is at 134 milliseconds, which is just about 12th notes or like triplet eighth notes at 140 BPM. So it's not necessarily gridded fully, but it does have the triplet flow to it. And there's some resonators here to do different chords that just give it like a little bit more color. And then there's just some post here, which is just disperser, OTT, EQ, doing, just some carving and some high pass, some dynamic EQ on Fab Filter. There's probably, there's two of these here, both doing like some high and some mid-high. Another OTT, a kilohertz stereo that's just making it a little bit more narrow. And then a utility, which is probably just doing like, just some random automations and stuff. And then we have a soft clipper and then some extra EQs afterwards, which were probably because I was going back and doing multiple mixes or mix downs of this track, and I was like, okay, well, I need to take out some more 3K, I need to take out some more 1K. Otherwise, I would usually have these before the glue compressor, right? Because you don't want to introduce any extra potential hard clipping. Moving on. We got a sub that is following the exact same rhythm with that ARP. This is just a serum sine wave that I just activated from within one of the Sora presets. This is the same deal, like I said, just another ARP. There's an EQ here that's basically doing nothing, and then a soft clipper. And now we move on to the next section. But before we do that, we have this little transitionary section here where we have this little sound right here, which is like climbing up in pitch. This is just a frequency shifter and then a high pass filter automation. And then behind all these, we have like a few of these one-shot style MIDI patches, which are taken from the same patch as this, but just turned like to a super high rate and then made the note super short, so it's just like a one-shot type thing. I added this just to help add some resolution to the rhythm of this patch. So if I turn all four of these on, or rather if I turn these two on only and listen to it, there's nothing in this like last beat here, and I wanted there to be like a specific one shot on the last beat. So if I add those in, it adds like that last little resolving like beat to the arrangement. So now we can move on to the next section here. There is a slight variation in this patch here. So this one has much more going on in the high, the mid-high, and it is a super like screechy type sound. I really like how it sounds though, so I ended up keeping it in, and it also has like a lot of like low end rumble to it, like in the 100 hertz. And typically I would take this out, but I was kind of a fan of like the amount of like low mid was in like this whole section. So that paired with the bass sounds pretty fucking sick. And then of course there's some other stuff going on down here. There's like a little rhythmy screech thing. This was another Sora sample that I just took and cut it up. It was just a preset or a MIDI clip that I froze and then chopped it up so that it doesn't have that tail in there anymore. There's some other little sounds in here. This one's cool. I really like this sound. This is another Sora preset. And when I first heard this, I was like, this would make a perfect like turnaround into like another section. So then I added like my own little crunchy bass thing under here. So yeah, this whole section is really, really sick, and I am pretty proud of how it came out. Now before we move on to the B section, I want to touch briefly on this little part right here, which is just another transition thing. This section right here, I feel like really helps transition the listener into the B section, so I'm going to go over it real quick. There's another patch here that is loosely based off of these two patches over here, but it eventually ends up sounding like a riser because of this frequency shifter motion. So it kind of comes in like a bass sound and then turns into like a riser toward the end. And then there's another sub here, which is just a triangle sub with like some white noise and stuff, and it's doing like the same kind of pitch automation. So altogether, this section sounds like this. But yeah, all in all, I was really proud of how this A section turned out, and I honestly was even more proud of how this B section turned out. So let's just jump straight into that. So off the bat, immediately you notice these saw chords. So if you listen to any of my music, you know that I'm a sucker for saw chords, for big saw chords. I've always loved melodic dubstep. I've always loved like future bass. So I have this saw stack here, this mid bass here, sub, and then a little lead layer with some phaser and stuff on it to give it like some stereo stuff. But if you were an average listener of my stuff, you would probably recognize this type of chord stack from my most recent track, because I love to use this specific layering for my saw chords. And I think it sounds pretty sick. But there's another little sound in here, which is a sample from the sample pack that has a lot of similar tonality. And hearing this sample made me realize that I needed like a big saw stack right here. I was like, oh, I definitely need to use chords here. So I added that and then layered it with this guy, and altogether it sounds pretty sick. And now we get into this very like head bangy, like rail breaking type of like quarter note flow, where the main sound that's happening here is just this bass glitch sample from the sample pack. I remember opening the sample pack and finding this glitch noise and hearing it and being like, this is already kind of like in time. I heard that and I was like, I could just drag that in and like it would probably fit well. So I dragged it in, and lo and behold, it did fit well. And pair that with some other crunchy little sound design things and the same rhythmy sound from earlier, and you already have some good foundation for this next section here. Then of course there's a sub. And then there are some little vocal yells here. There's just like some Fox Stevenson splice sample of him just saying like check or something. And then we got the same kind of drums going on here. This next little section I think is actually really fun. There's a little mini fake out thing here where the kick on the one has been removed, and it goes straight into this little drum fill thing with a voice line from this old game I used to play. Warning. And then there's a little bass swoop in here that goes straight into another quarter note rhythmy thing. So that's just another Sora sample down here on top of another sub with a mid bass in here that's just doing a different rhythm. And then there's a screech in here. And then there are some other just, like color bassy resonated things in here, all on top of the same bass glitch that we were already talking about. This next section is like basically the same, except the chord stack is dropped down 5 semitones to give it like a more of a chord progression type of feel. This next little section is actually pretty cool because there's a variation going on here and another vocal sample. So this is just another Sora sample that has just been chopped up and stretched. There's a reverb automation, a width automation, and a high-pass filter automation just to help outro this little sound. And at the same time, it helps make some space for another vocal sample. And there's a few things happening here. There's a frequency shifter that's helping sweep the vocal in. And then a delay and a reverb, and then an OTT and a soft clipper, all with some varying automations to give like a little slapback delay effect. And then at the same time, there's still same sub, same stuff going on here, but it helps transition into this next section, which uses the same saw chord as before. Now, the only big change in this section versus the first section is that there is a different voice line. So the original one says warning, and then this is a voice line from Oriana from League of Legends where she says ravage. Ravage. And I thought that sounded sick, and so I was like, you know what? Let's throw that in there. So in the same type of like fake out downbeat thing, she says ravage, and then it like sweeps back into this like rhythmy flow. Down here, I forgot to mention, we have some cool pickup sounds going on. So there's this guy right here, which also was a Sora sample that got flattened and then, you know, had a ton of effects thrown at it and stuff. There's a phaser on here. Very notably, there's a phaser on here that's giving it like a cool motion. And then there is another version which is much more mono, but it's still very similar. Now, we can move on to the last part. This last little section right here is essentially the same as the other ones, but there's a super small triplet section in here. So it sounds like this. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then that takes us straight into the outro. And then for the outro, we just have a white noise downlifter, a sub drop, and then a Sora sample that has just been put into a simpler with some basic effects, and a ARP that has a super small decay time that slowly gets longer, and that creates like a powering down type effect. That's pretty much it. Oh yeah, and then the mastering chain. So there's a frequency shifter on here that is just adding that little swoop into the song. I've been doing this more frequently with like a lot of my tracks. I feel like it gives it the kind of vibe that the song is like turning on. It's like powering up. And then there is a high pass EQ that is being automated for this one section in the drop. And then there's a utility. I like to use a utility to tame the stereo during key moments to accentuate other parts. So like the pre-drop, like this section, the transition between the first half and the second half of this A section at another point in the B section. Whenever there is like a really big transition that needs to happen, I'll like cut down on the stereo so that way when it comes back in, it just hits that much harder. A saturator, +4, mid-side EQ is just doing, you know, a chop at like 150. And then we got a glue compressor that is just doing 2 decibels a gain, and then insight so that I can just know if I'm loud enough. So yeah, that's kind of like the whole project. I know I kind of went through a lot of this stuff like pretty quickly, and I did that just because like I know that breakdown videos can be like extremely long, and I didn't even go through like a full song. I only went through like a 1.5 minute long like clip essentially, and I don't want this video to be super long. In the end, I really tried to use as much as I could from the sample pack without making it sound like too dull or too samey or, you know, just outright sounding like Sora. I made it a point to myself to try to use as much as I possibly could from the serum presets, or I would get really close. But obviously, it is still very me. It has, you know, my personal twist on it, like my songwriting, my arrangement, and stuff like that. But I just wanted to try to use as much as I possibly could from the pack, and I feel like I really succeeded. But yeah, I've done enough talking, so I'm gonna let myself outro this next part. See y'all. All right, let me get real here for a sec. Huge thank you to Sora for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this contest. It truly was a lot of fun. I'm not usually good at working under pressure or with a time constraint, but these kind of competitions are just like, they're just too good and too much fun to pass up. So huge thank you for just hosting this whole thing, putting this whole thing together, and even bigger thank you for believing that my submission was worthy of first place. It truthfully means a ton. And while I'm at it, huge shout outs to the other winners. I'll put them on screen. I'll put them in the description. They will be everywhere. Please, they're all completely cracked producers. Go blow them the fuck up. They deserve this just as much as me. And yeah, with that all being said, thank you so much. I can't wait to show all you new people the type of stuff that I do, the type of stuff that I make. It's really gonna be fun. So stick around. Love you guys. Peace.